Hey everybody, I'm going to be back to my normal videos starting next week, but for this video I'm going to be talking directly to you. Now, a lot of people have been doing these top 10 best games from the past decade, and I thought it would be fun to do my list, because it got me thinking about which games I would pick. And speaking of which, you're going to have your list, which will undoubtedly be different from mine. Maybe there's some overlapping games, but probably not the same top 10. So I would encourage you to leave your list down in the comments below. Really, it's a lot of fun. You should do it. Okay, so with that, let's get into it. My number 10 game is Portal 2. I like games that make you use your brain. Not always, but usually I tend to be a sucker for these. And I think Portal 2 has just the right amount of feeling that sense of reward and satisfaction while also not driving you crazy, though I definitely did have some of those moments. But anyways, if you like the first Portal and you like games that make you use your brain, this is definitely a good one. Okay, next game on the list is Overcooked 2, and this comes with one big caveat though. You have to play this with somebody else. It absolutely lives and dies on being a co-op game. You can play it by yourself and you can still have some fun with it, but it is so fun with another player. I played this with my brother-in-law, and honestly that's the only time I ever even played it, but we played it like non-stop for 2 days straight, and it's so hilariously funny with the sense of panic and just craziness that it induces. It's so fun. I love this game. Okay, my next game on the list at number 8 is the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. Now, I know these games originally came out back during the PS1 days, but for me, this is just the perfect example of games that benefit from being redone, since those early PS1 games kind of look ugly by today's standards. Not that I have anything against retro graphics, but those early 3D ones just haven't aged as well as some of the other stuff. Okay, so I played this game a lot. I actually am usually not somebody who likes to 100% games, and I actually did that, at least for the first 2 Crash Bandicoots. I might eventually go back and do that for the third one, but yeah, this game was just so much fun for me to go back and play these games, so it made my list. Okay, at number 7 on the list, we've got Super Mario Odyssey. Now, it's funny, something I thought about is when I was playing this game when it was brand new, something I realized is that I have actually never bought a huge new Mario game on release day before. And for this one I did, and what a good decision that was, because I played this game for hours and hours when it came out. I actually had even more fun with this than Breath of the Wild. I had a lot of fun with Breath of the Wild. I actually played Breath of the Wild more than this, just because I think it has a little more content. But anyways, this is an awesome game, and you know, looking back on it, maybe it was a little bit too easy, but I just had so much fun, I don't even care. Awesome game. My number 6 game would be Cuphead, and why am I holding an Xbox One controller? Well, that's because there wasn't actually a physical release for Cuphead. Well, technically there was, but all it had was a download code inside of it. It didn't actually have a physical disc. Now, my hope is that when the DLC finally comes out for Cuphead, that they will make a physical release, and I've actually seen some news reports that it will. But anyways, back to the game. The game is awesome. It to me is exactly what an indie game should be. And I know eventually it did get funding from Microsoft, so some people don't consider it as much of an indie game as some others, but read the story behind the creators. I mean, you talk about people coming from small beginnings making an awesome game. Cuphead is a great example of that. And the visual style, it's overwhelming, but if you actually see the amount of work these people had to put into this game, I mean, it's no wonder the DLC alone is just taking years to make. Is that it's just an absolute labor of love, and the game is incredible. And the gameplay itself, a lot of people get turned off by the difficulty, but I actually loved it because it made me feel like I was playing a retro game. And to me, it was just the perfect marriage of an indie game combining with that retro influence and you know, utilizing the power of a modern console. And actually, it doesn't even really need that much power. I mean, it runs great on the Switch. So if you have a Switch or an Xbox, I played it on Xbox because I played it. I actually bought an Xbox just to play this game back at the time. But if you have either one, you gotta play this game. It's awesome. Okay, next at number 5, we've got another hard game, and that would be Bloodborne, made by From Software. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Dark Souls games, and for a lot of people who love the Dark Souls games, this was just so refreshing. It was familiar enough but different enough at the same time, and the lore in this game and the enemy design and just the creepy gothic vibe and some of the surprises the game had later on, and the weapons. I know the Dark Souls games have a lot more weapons than Bloodborne, but the creativity of the weapon design in this game, the weapons are so fun in this game. And if you look online and see which game from Software that people like the most people say this game over all the Dark Souls games or anything else. It's really popular and it deserves it. Okay, next on my list at number 4 is a game probably none of you are going to have on your list, and that would be The Last Guardian. Now, the reason why a lot of people don't like this game is because the controls. The way the game controls can be frustrating. Some people argue it's intentional. I don't know how true that is, but for me, it worked. Trying to get this massive companion of yours to do stuff and just adventuring through the game with it totally reminded me of my dog. And I think most of the people who love this game are like dog lovers or had some pet that they're really attached to at some time. So for me, it really connected with me on a personal, emotional level, and there's just some really awesome moments in the game where your companion he's so much bigger and stronger than you, but you have these little opportunities where you can actually help him, and it just feels so good to do that. Or there's these times where he totally saves your butt, and it's just awesome, and there's these just totally epic moments. So yeah, a game not a lot of you will probably have on your list. If it is on your list, let me know, because I'd like to hear that. But anyways, yeah, I love this game. Okay, next up we've got Resident Evil 2, and I really considered putting this number 1, and maybe it is, but I almost just didn't want to have recency bias totally, overwhelm my feelings on this one. So maybe this actually is number 1. I'll have to wait a while. But anyways, this to me is just exactly what those early PS1 day games needed. With the Crash Bandicoot games, they didn't really need to reinvent them. So the more simple approach to those games was okay with me, but for this is just incredible. It's so fun. It captures the classic Resident Evil hook of just like planning where you want to go, choosing which zombies you're going to use bullets on, which type of bullets, this and that. It's so fun. And play it on hardcore, because it doesn't use the ink ribbons, which limits your saves. On the other modes, I don't know, maybe if it's too hard, don't do hardcore, but for me, I recommend hardcore. Anyways, amazing game, and I cannot wait for Resident Evil 3. Okay, the final 2 games on my list are actually a tie, because I've gone back and forth on these games for years, and that would be Dark Souls and The Last of Us. Now, I originally played these on PS3, but I now have the PS4 versions. It's a long story, I won't get into it, but anyways, they're so different that to me it's hard to say one is better than the other, because Dark Souls is a lot more about gameplay and the story is more pieced together with the lore, and Last of Us is all about the story, but the gameplay reminds me of Resident Evil, which is why I love it so much, because it's a lot of managing your inventory and really choosing where to use your bullets and your ammo. And that's why I loved it so much. Combined with the story, the storytelling is just leaps and bounds above everything, certainly at the time, and I think even now is just so much better than most stories in games. But Dark Souls, I remember with Dark Souls, Best Buy had this deal going on. This was in 2011, and they had this deal going on, buy 2 games, get a game free. And I was like, I know I'm buying Skyrim because that was such a big deal, and I know I'm buying Batman Arkham City because that game was a huge deal too, and I was a big Batman fan. And so I was like, alright, well, what am I going to get with the 3rd game for a free game? And I'm like, well, let's try this Dark Souls game because some people seem to like it. And I ended up playing nothing but Dark Souls, and I didn't play Arkham City or Skyrim at all that holiday season. and I ended up kind of playing Arkham City a little bit, but by the time I got to Skyrim, that game was a huge letdown to me because it's so different from Dark Souls. I know it's a great game in its own right, but for me, I was just like, it's got to be Dark Souls. So, I mean, that game just totally blew me away, was such a surprise, and being able to get through its difficulty was such a point of pride and so enjoyable. But yeah, so those are my 1 and 2. Okay, so that was my top 10, but of course I want to know what your top 10 is. Or, you know, your top 5, top 3, whatever. Also, let me know what you thought of this video format. I could always do more of these if you want me to sprinkle some more of these in. Also, a lot of you have asked me why the channel isn't bigger than it is. And believe me, I'm right there with you. It's been incredibly difficult to grow this channel, and I can say for sure that I appreciate every time you guys leave a comment or a thumbs up or anything. I appreciate it so much, because that really is the only positive reinforcement I get for doing this. You know, I mean, I'm not getting paid at this point. The channel's not big enough. I do have a Patreon page. I understand Patreon is not for everybody, and but if you do want to do that and you know, get more involved with the channel, even for just $1 a month, you'll get access to the benefits of the Patreon, which is that you'll be able to vote on topics for the show. So consider that if that's an option for you. If not, you know, I hope you all are doing well, and I look forward to keep making videos. And as always, I will see ya in the next video.